And we should be going live right now. So welcome everyone. Just give us the usual times to align all the satellites and spam on social the different URL. Frank, you have it as well over there. I'm spamming on the mailing list. Okay. And now, so on the JUG Milano Twitter.
I just realized that Italian Java developers all have long birds. That's very interesting. I just noticed it right now.
Maybe you don't know, but this is the bad influence that that Mario and also Frank had over me over the past few months. And of course, I cannot do anything for this, but for the rest, I think it's their bad influence. Of course, I'm joking. It's a good influence. But yeah, it happens, it seems.
And in 2017, I had also long hair for 1 hour, 1 year and a half. Then I cut them. Maybe Mario remember when I had the long hair.
All right, so welcome everyone also to this new event, JUG Mito, in collaboration between JUG Milano and JUG Torino. Today we have a special guest with us today, Nicolas. I will let in a second Frank introduce himself. Just as a reminder, you can use the YouTube chat to also interact with us. So if you have any question during the presentation, please don't hesitate to put it in the lateral live chat, and we will be monitoring on them and following up with the question later. Don't hesitate to invite your friends to a remote watch party or an in-person if the location where you're connected from allows that. And with that, Frank, up to you.
Okay. Hi, Nicolas. So we used to do a small interview before letting the speaker go with his presentation, just to wait that all the people joining. And so you're working for Hazelcast, and right? And what are you doing in Hazelcast?
I'm a developer advocate. So basically, I'm trying to raise awareness and to let people use Hazelcast more easily. That involves doing talks like tonight, or writing blog posts, or going to conference and interacting with people, or creating a heroes program, so to recognize the people in the open source community who contributes the most to Hazelcast. And it can not only be code, but it can be just supporting this kind of stuff. I mean, it's very, very wide.
So are you involved with, I guess you are involved with the open source community, talking with them, and also maybe contributing back over there than the others?
I unfortunately don't write as much code as I would like, because when you write code, well, it's a bit of an involved activity. Yes, I write codes for my demo, which is good enough, but I don't contribute regularly to open source in general.
And so I guess that you missed a bit the conferences on site rather than online. Yeah, me too. And
just a week before all that stuff started, before we had lockdown in France, I was in California, and the week was, hey, spend 4 days in California, go to Romania, do a talk, then go to Istanbul, do a talk, then fly back on Saturday, then on Monday morning, fly to Australia. And then I would do Australia and New Zealand. And to be honest, when the lockdown started, it was during the weekend. No, it was not during the weekend. So first, they canceled the Romanian conference. So I had to change my seat and fly directly to Istanbul. And then they also canceled the Istanbul conference. And I said, oh, I don't want to change anymore. Let's go to Istanbul anyway, because that would be crazy. So I spent 2 days, 1 day, 2 days in Istanbul, then flew back, then they announced lockdown. And at that moment I thought, I don't need to fly to half a world away. And I was quite pleased, but it has been more than 1 year. And definitely it's really, really hard because doing talks online, you are talking to your screen all the time. There is no interactivity, no feedback. I have a nice story for that. It was 2 years ago. It was at the end, the conference season. There are 2 seasons, basically. It's from late January, February to June, July, and then it starts again in September and it ends in December. So it was the end of the June, July season, and I had to go to Volkswagen Luxembourg, and it was. I was very tired. I had traveled a lot. I really wanted to get home, but hey, it's my job, so I flew there. Then I arrived to the hotel, and the conference is in the same place as the hotel. So I go to my room, and I need to go down for my talk. And I say, oh, I don't want to go. But still, I go because it's my job. And then I start putting on my stuff. I do my talk. And afterwards, I felt much, much better. I was again energized. And, well, I could do another talk the day afterwards. But when I talk online, when I talk to my screen, I spend a lot of energy, and afterwards I'm just empty and I cannot do anything anymore. And the fact that you are there, that I can talk with you, even if you are not physically present, that we can have interaction is really great. So if you want to stay in the stream while I'm talking, I can see your face, I can see you nodding or not nodding. That's really nice.
Okay. And what about Thousandcast? So I guess I read about that you are a distributed company, so I think that you work all remotely or with small offices. So how are you organized?
To be honest, our headquarters is in California. Our main development center is still in Turkey because Hazelcast was incepted by Turkish people, but yes, we have people now in Ukraine, we have people in France, there is somebody in Denmark, there are people in the Czech Republic, Bulgaria. It's distributed by default, though we have offices again in Istanbul. So even though there is this office, everything still runs on Slack. Well, to sum it up in a very, very short way.
And what about the product? Are you, because I remember that you started with just a cache, if you any memory distributed cache. So I guess I see that you evolved with also I don't remember my stream. Jets.
Yeah, Jets, exactly. But before I just want to go back, it's not a distributed cache, it's a distributed in-memory data grid. And
it's the in-memory data grid, you're right. Sorry, because I used it in the past. Now, no, but I used it, I think it's 7 or 8 years ago. I used it in... Yes, it was.
One of the use cases is actually caching, but you have queues, you have a lot of different data structures. Also, a couple of years ago, you know that since Hazelcast is by default is distributed, we must comply with the CAP theorem, and the initial design was availability. So we returned something even if it was not correct, and some people have use case for consistency first, and so we added what we call a CP subsystem. So you can do a lot of stuff with Hazelcast, and actually, for example, I think that Spring, I don't want to say anything wrong, but I think that Spring Cloud Gateway is using Hazelcast under the cover. For logs or for some stuff. And also we have another product, an in-memory stream processing engine called Hazelcast Jet, and it's also distributed. So you can do your data pipeline, but in a distributed way. You can distribute the workload. You can scale horizontally to your hard's contents.
Great. How many people we have now, Matteo, John, on the channel? You are mute, so unmute, please.
Usually I'm much more attentive to if I'm muted or not. So you catch me even live. That's the beauty of live. So yeah, we are hovering. I think that most people are already joined, and I think that we are hovering. So I think that we can start at any time. Before we start, just a couple of housekeeping from me. So as I said, you can use the live chat on the side that you find on YouTube to ask questions, and please be free to interact and to write your question in the live. We will try to be as much interactive as possible by proxying your question and your comment. So as Nicolas has also mentioned, also throughout the presentation, at a certain point, I will post Google form where you can put your email to participate in a raffle for a JetBrains coupon kindly offered by JetBrains. So you can participate in the raffle if you want. And with that, I think that Nicolas, the stage is yours. Actually, just for the purpose of camera, we will be just not in the stream with the face, but I will be doing the interaction and putting people in the stream as soon as I see that there is a chance of interaction. So don't worry, we are just right behind you, behind the scene.
I don't want you to be behind me. I want you to be in front of me.
Yes, because you see now Mario has already started with the keyboard. So I will just sort of like play the director cut like Michael Bay. I will play some explosions also if special effects if I can. Okay, so enough with me talking, and Nicolas, the stage is yours, and also thank you again for joining us today. We are really thrilled to hear from you.
Thanks a lot for having me. This is the talk from imperative to reactive. I already introduced myself. The parts that I didn't talk about is I'm not a reactive guru. I won't talk to you about really deep stuff. I will talk to you about something that if you're a regular developer like me, you might be interested in knowing, just to know how you can migrate. So I have already told I work for Hazelcast, and let's start directly. Let's dive into the subject. So basically, reactive is quite like an old, depending the subjectivity of old subject, and it started to be like really like designed in an explicit way with the Reactive Manifesto in 2014. Could you please just put myself, yeah, perfect, because the slide is much more important than what I'm talking about, than me talking, than my image. And this manifesto has actually like four items. The first one is a system to be qualified as reactive must be responsive, must be as fast as possible. The second is it must be resilient. So if something goes wrong, which can happen, and in general in the GVM it would be an exception, well, you will still return something, or at least you will return 500, but you will not block and just like wait until the timeout. The third item is it should be elastic, and this refers to scalability. So you should be able to easily scale horizontally, and the scalability should be as close to linear as possible. Of course, like linear scalability is very hard to achieve, but let's say that the idea is to be as linear as possible. And the final item is it's message-driven, asynchronous message-driven. So you're just not calling an API and expecting a response. You are just sending a message. And the people who wrote and who endorsed the Reactive Manifesto, basically, they had something in mind at the time. Their idea was to actually refer to the actor model, though they don't mention the actor model. The idea was to have this kind of system. So the actor model comes from the OTP, the Erlang platform, and you have like so-called actors, and they interact by just like sending messages to each other. And the more important stuff is there is no shared state. If you want to send state, you send it in the message. But I mean, what the state of this actor It's just that how it handles the message. You cannot tell it, hey, change your state. You just send a message with the payload that you want, and then the actor reacts. And so you send messages, they got into a mailbox, and then the actor processes them in kind. If at any point you see me like looking at my feet like now, it's because my cat has decided that it's just the perfect time to want some love. So sorry about that. It's my cat, and he always finds the right time to come to me and to just like want to be petted. Sorry about the interruption. It's not the first time since 1 year, and it probably won't be the last. So that was the actor model. And in the end, it didn't work out that well. I mean, there is Akka, it works. That there are usage of the actor model on the JVM, but what is really not popular, and honestly, I don't know why it was what the market focused on, it's reactive streams. And the reactive streams is actually just like very close to the actor model, but it has one gigantic event loop here. So you receive requests, they get put into an event queue, and then the event loop like process them each in kind by just dispatching them to the right event handler. And of course, that event loop should never ever block. If it blocks, then all the messages, all the events, well, they will pile up in the queue, and probably you don't want that because you want your system to be reactive. And there are good reasons to go reactive. There are also not so good reasons to go reactive. And the thing that bugs me the most is, hey, we want to be web scale, so we must go reactive. And yes, in theory, it's right. If you want to go web scale, reactive is really a good idea, because then reactive means that you are not limited by the number of threads of your system. But the problem is most companies, most organizations, most applications, they don't need that kind of scalability. You can easily scale to like thousands of concurrent requests per second without being reactive. And I don't know many applications that need this kind of scale already. I mean, even Twitter like started with Ruby on Rails. So if Twitter started like this and migrated, you can probably like start using like normal blocking and then migrate when it's really, really necessary. Something that might make more sense, but it's up to you to really like evaluate the pros and the cons, is that when you have your own infrastructure, when you have your infrastructure on site, in general, you do a lot of waste in your code. Like you don't count the CPU cycle, you don't try to optimize everything, you might waste memory, whatever, you don't care. And then, because right now it's the hot topic, you migrate to the clouds, for, again, good or bad reasons, then everything will be counted and your wastes will be quite visible in the monthly bill. So being reactive means that you are trying to fully utilize your computer power, and in that case, it might like lower down your bill. Of course, there is no such thing as the free lunch, and reactive comes with quite many like disadvantages, or at least cons. The first one is a more complex mental model. When you write imperative code, you know that, hey, I call this API, and then it will be a request and a response, and I expect something. When you write the same stuff, but it's reactive, that means that you are just subscribing. I will go to subscription just afterwards. And so the problem with that is what you see is just like a very, very above abstraction layer upon what really will happen. For this reason, because it's all based on subscription and message passing, it will be much harder to debug. I mean, just remember at the beginning, Java lambdas, that was not so fun. Now IntelliJ is able to do that. At the beginning, it was not. Specific APIs is really a thing. Like basic constructs such as if, else, they don't exist in the reactive world. If you do if else, probably you want to evaluate the stuff right now. So you must use API that will mimic this behavior. And if you don't know about them, well, it will be hard to like just know, because it's what I call unknown. So if you happen to have a reactive guru next to you, that's my case, I can always ask one of my friends who is actually like an expert in that. I can get the correct answer. Otherwise, Stack Overflow or whatever will be your friend. And you need to make sure that it's correct. And finally, the idea behind reactive is that your whole call chain needs to be reactive. If at some point in the chain there is a blocking call, well, you will have two reactive subchain, but then a blocking nodes in the middle, and then your call chain will be blocking. So that's not what you want to do. You want everything to be reactive. So all those items, they have a cost. They have a development cost. They have a maintenance costs, and it's up to you to decide whether those costs are balanced by the economy you will make by on the cloud, for example. Nevertheless, let's imagine that you've decided that reactive is your thing and you want to migrate anyway. So there actually reactive streams are pretty simple. It's just 4 building blocks, 4 interfaces. The first one is a publisher, and a publisher can subscribe to a subscriber. Subscriber itself has 4 methods. On subscribe, you pass in a subscription, and you can see that the subscription interface has like a request method, and it asks for items. So the subscription actually is the object to handle back pressure, because the idea behind back pressure is without back pressure, a fast producing publisher can overflow a slow consuming subscriber. But the idea is that it's the subscriber which asks for item to the publisher. And then you've got the on next. So you've got like a stream of objects, and on next will be called at each next object. And then you've got on error if something bad happens and you don't want that, and on complete if it completes successfully. And then because we will be chaining both publisher and subscriber, we will do some stuff in between. We have the processor that implements both publisher and subscriber. And this is like the foundation. This is pretty basic stuff. But at this point, you will need to write everything by yourself. Probably you will make like bugs, right? Because, I mean, you need to think about everything. So instead of writing your own reactive engine using those 4 building blocks, you probably want to use one of the existing one. And one of the existing one in that case is Project Reactor. Project Reactor is led by Pivotal or by VMware or by Tanzu or by, I don't know how they call themselves right now, but they are not dependent on Spring. Yeah? It's the other way around. Spring depends on Project Reactor. And so they offer implementation. For example, instead of having just the publisher interface, you have Flux, which basically models like a stream of 0 or 2 star elements, or a mono which can represent 0 or 1 element. And then those Flux and those monos, they also have functions or methods on their own, and you can do more stuff with them. Just to mention about the JDK9 classes, you might know about JDK9 flow class, which also has the 4 previous building blocks, but in a different package. And if you go on the org.reactive streams website, you will see that these comments that, hey, there will be a migratory period. And during this time, we will use the org.reactive stream package, but afterwards we will migrate to the flow class. And the flow class was delivered in 2017, so 4 years ago, and it's still not done. So I'm not sure that this statement really reflects the truth, but at least it's there. You can believe it, you cannot believe it, but well, I don't so much. However, if you need to switch between like the org.reactive stream and the JDK9 flow classes, then what you can do is use like this flow adapters class, and you can switch, well, you can adapt from one to the other. So if you need to bridge between the two, use flow adapters. And then I will be talking about, the demo will be about Spring. Sorry, I'm a Spring fanboy. So you might know that Spring Framework Web supports Reactive Streams since the V5, which is a couple of years ago already. And there is a dedicated sub-project called Spring Webflox with a dedicated package. And the idea is, how can you switch from Spring MVC to Spring Webflox? Well, the thing is, since Spring 5, you can also configure Spring MVC with the functional API. And Spring Webflox, you can configure via the functional API. And in general, you are used to using annotations, but Spring Webflox can also be used using annotations. So the most straightforward path is, just remove this Spring MVC engine, replace it with Spring Webflox, and it works out of the box. I believe this is the fastest one, but also the road to hell, because you will find the annotations familiar, but what happens underneath will be completely different. And so if you encounter a bug, it will be very, very hard. So what my preferred migration path would be, first, migrate from the annotations to the functional API, and then change the underlying engine. And because you probably are not familiar with the functional API, you will see the difference, and you will start asking yourself questions, which is always better, and not take it for granted. So I've talked a lot, and now there is time to show you some code. So just as a word of advice, this morning I had actually the same talk, and I had a lot of issues with the codes, like my computer was very, very slow, and it started speeding up, and in the end, it was not as great as I could expect. So please, be nice, because I'm not sure how it will go tonight. I've created an application. So I went to start.spring.io. If at any point you have questions, just don't hesitate to ask questions. Matteo or one of the other organizers will be happy to tell it, and I will try my best to answer. So I went to start.spring.io. I got the latest Spring Boot parent POM. I'm using, my application will be pretty simple. It will be starter Data JPA, because I will use a database. Spring Boot starter web, because that's probably what you are using. Because I want to have the Hibernate second level cache, I've added Hazelcast to the mix, and Hazelcast Hibernate, so they can integrate well with one another. And you can tell me, it's pretty stupid. You are using an in-memory cache on top of an in-memory database, and that will be perfectly true. The thing is, that is good for demo purposes. In normal life, you would use Postgres, MySQL, Oracle, whatever. But here, I'm using it for demo purposes. It won't change a thing. And then there are the usual Spring Boot Maven plugin. But well, I have on my application nothing specific. It's just a regular Spring Boot application that Mario loves, because it has a lot of annotation and there is a lot of magic everywhere. Then I have my person entity, and here it's not Spring Boot, it's actually Data JPA. Well, sorry, it's actually JPA, and still Mario probably loves it, because again, everything is configured with annotations. Then I have my repository, and here I have no annotation, but still there is a lot of magic that happens at runtime. Here I don't implement any method. I just extend the JPA repository, and I will already have at runtime some good methods like find all or find by ID. And now finally I have my controller. My controller has two endpoints. I have one that returns all persons in the database, and one that returns one by their PK. Then, because Spring Boot is integrated with, Hazelcast is integrated with Spring Boot, I just need to add a hazelcast.xml. If you like XML, you can use XML. If you don't like XML, you can do the same with programmatic configuration, and then it will detect there is a hazelcast.xml or a config bin object, and it will start an embedded Hazelcast instance. Then I have added like this data.sql. So again, more magic at the start of the application. This script will run, and I will have new data into my database, so I can already start playing with it. And finally, I have configured the second level cache here, and I've configured it to use Hazelcast and to use this Hazelcast instance. And that's all. So let's see how it works. Like right now, Spring MVC, Spring Data JPA, I start the application and it should do something good. And now, please, demo gods, be with me. So far so good. It starts normally and I can start to curl. So let's clear that and I will curl it. I did some changes already, so I need to curl from scratch, curl at local hosts 8080/person/1. And I've got my first entity by its ID. And if we check the logs, so what I did is I enabled the Hibernate statistics. And just with Spring Boot, it's really easy. It's just one line of config. And what it does is every time it tells me what happened. So here I did a query. The query went to the controller. The controller went to the repository. The repository went to the database. And Hibernate did its magic. So it went to the database. Here we can see it took some time. And then it put the data into the cache. Now, before my cache was like completely cold. Now I have one entity into the cache. And here we saw that it first tried to check into the cache. And because it didn't work, it got into the database, then it put it into the cache. Now, if I redo the same requests, I expect it to be into the cache, so it will return it from the cache. And presto, there is one cache hit. There is no interaction with the database. So that's a very, very nice way to speed up your system. Of course, there are other constraints. You are basically having derived data that you need to keep in sync, blah, blah, blah. But like for this demo, it's good. I have the cache, it works, I'm happy. Also, something that is worth noticing is if I query for all the entities and I query for a second entity, the first query will have put all my entities into the cache. And I can see it here. I have like 5 puts. And so here I directly hit it. So now all my database all my table is in the cache. Great. So that's my starting point. I have normal, standard, classic stack. Now I want to start migrating to Reactive. And as I mentioned, the first thing you need to do, or that would advise you to do, is to use the functional configuration, functional way to use Spring WebMVC. And it's called Spring Web FN like function. So let's do it. This is actually one of the hardest part because I removed the controller. It's not a controller anymore. It's just a configuration of like standard bean. So there is nothing Spring MVC specific. What I'm putting is I'm putting rota function into the context. And those rota function, there is this like method called routes. And if you use Kotlin, you will even have like nicer API, but here I'm using Java, so I'm using what I can. And it reads really like in a functional way. So I will get from /person, and then, yep, I was a bit too fast here. I have a lambda that takes a request and returns a server response. So it's not the old HTTP requests and HTTP response that we have been using in the past with Java or now Jakarta EE. It's like dedicated types, server request and server response. And you can see that because we pass the requests as an input, then we can do some stuff, just like getting the ID. And here we don't just map with an annotation. We are actually like doing functional extraction of the ID. Otherwise, I believe it's quite similar. So I will start the application again and check that everything works. And do we have questions at the moment? Please be interactive.
No, Nicolas, we have a good comment, and I think that we can just briefly mention it, but I think that it was actually a good candidate for a broader discussion at the end. Gualtiero has been mentioning earlier, outside of Spring Boot, we can do reactive programming using RxJava. And I think just for context also about what we've seen from you, if I understand correctly, is that true, you mentioned that this library that you will be presenting actually in code a little bit later, is not really tied to Spring. So you can use it as a sort of like as a standalone. I think that here, maybe if you want to anticipate some comments, otherwise we can keep it for a discussion at the end.
No, that's perfectly correct. Yes, you can do reactive programming with RxJava, with Akka, with a lot of different stuff. It's just that perhaps I'm super biased. I feel that there are a lot of projects that are already using Spring and they want to migrate. And though Spring can actually integrate with RxJava, the easiest path is probably the one that I'm showing you. So yes, you're perfectly correct. You don't need to do Spring. You can do whatever you want. It's just that at some point I need a demo and I need to delve into the nitty-gritty details of the real life, and I cannot just present a generic solution.
Yeah, also maybe one point to add as well is that with this library, I think that the integration with the Spring, so basically it's a little bit of an inverse. So let's say because you are presenting a Spring application, then it becomes even more natural to present this reactive library. On the other hand, other sort of like a web framework may propose other ones, like indeed RxJava, they are more integrated. So I think that, and especially I think that we had in the archive from JUG Milano some exercise where we used reactive libraries on their own, and we used both this library and RxJava. And in that case, actually we seen how the concept mapped the same, and basically didn't make a big difference which libraries for Reactive Streams we were using. But then when you start to integrate it on a web framework like you're showing us today, then I think that's some more consideration. But the good thing is that like for like a functional programming in general, once you learn and adopt the concept, then it's only a matter of finding the name of the method in your library that normally should also be called the same, even though sometimes it's not exactly the same.
That's the problem. The concepts are very similar, but then the API are in general not that similar. And then there might be that's even worse. So when there are two different methods that do the same stuff, you just need to find the methods that in the other framework. But sometimes they are similar in the name, but they have slightly different semantics. And that's where the devil is in the details. So you must be very, very careful. There's reactive programming right now, especially in the Java world, that they don't have any specification, but the 4 building blocks that I've showed before. And the 4 building blocks, as you can see, they are like pretty like foundational, but they don't bring you much. If you want to use them, I mean, you need to do everything by yourself. And as I mentioned, you will probably fail. So you need at some point to define what framework, what like library you will be using. And in general, you will be led by the framework. I know Mario doesn't like frameworks, but I do like frameworks actually, because in general, I prefer to learn the framework and then focus on the business case. But I understand that some programmers that dislike that because they want the freedom to do whatever they choose. That's fine. If you want more a kind of library approach, probably Vertex. That's where probably Mario wants you to go. Is more adapted. It's one that is proposed by Red Hat. And honestly, I have no experience with it. It's less of a framework. It's more of a library. So you can be pretty opinionated about it and use it however you want. But I have no experience in that.
Also one point that you mentioned just earlier, I think that both libraries in their documentation have for each of the methods like what is called the marble diagram, where you have that. So that helps to exactly to the point that we're saying. Maybe you are trying to find the method and maybe they're called the same, but they're slightly different. That kind of like it's an informal way to specify the behavior. But those marble diagram, I think that they really sort of like speak immediately to try to find exactly what you're looking for. Or even maybe you are just selected the library that you wanted to use, like in this case, and you simply want to make sure about what is the operator or what is the method that you're looking for.
Yeah, marble diagrams, they are awesome. I mean, it's awesome. So, I mean, every time you read the documentation and there is no marble diagram, you always have to wonder, oh, what happens? I don't understand it. But then you see it like in a graphical way and it's much, much better. So yeah, definitely. Marble diagrams for the win.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you, Nicolas.
Thanks. I appreciate the interaction. So if you've got more comments, just like send them to me, and that will be very nice. So let's continue. Right now, I have migrated. I've done the first step. I don't remember if I checked that it worked. No, I didn't check. So I will check now that it works. I've restarted the application. I hope so, at least. And so now I have the same behavior as before. So as you can see, Spring is quite flexible. It does the exact same stuff. You can just configure it in different ways. So here again, no Spring WebMVC specific, just like still annotations, because that's how you probably are doing it right now. And so configuration in beans, but the rest is just like standard beans. And then it's up to Spring to check how they will be used. Now with this approach of functional programming of routes, there seemed to be a new pattern that emerged, and in the Spring documentation or tutorial, you will find the idea of handler. And basically the handler is just extracting those methods that transform a server request into a server response and put them into a dedicated class. So because I'm a nice citizen, I want people to follow what is promoted by Spring. That's just what I did. And the only difference is that, well, I created this person handler as a static class inside the routes. And so I have this additional layer between the route and the repository that's called handler. Otherwise, it's still the same. You can see that it reads a bit better now. So here you get handler get all, here you get one. So I won't test it because it's pretty straightforward. It was just a refactoring, extracting stuff into a class. But the next one is a bit more interesting. You can organize your routes however you want. So before I had one single bean for every route, but basically you can create a route with different like sub routes. So here I have a route and the parent context is person, then it gives me a builder and I can add sub routes. So I have the first one that get all and the second one that get one. Now this one is a bit more interesting. So I want just to test it and check that everything works as expected. So if this one works, I assume that the previous one worked as well. Or if something is not clear, also I will have in my last slide the Git repository so you can test it out by yourself. And now let's do it. I will ask for a person 2. I check that I have like one miss, good, one put, good, because I restarted the JVM, so my cache was reset. And now the second time I've got hit, so it works. Still everything works as expected. And that's where the hardest, the pain point is. So depending on where you come from, it will be a very huge pain point, or it will be just like snap of the finger. At this point, we are ready to migrate to Spring Webflox. And here I will show you the difference. The difference is like insignificant. You are just replacing the Spring Boot Starter Web by Spring Boot Starter Webflox. And changing the packages. So depending on where you stand from, they just like kept the class name and just put the same class into a different package. So this is just a change here. There is also, I will show you a slight change. And here, let me show you. I didn't. Yes, that's what I thought. I didn't do the checkout correctly. So let me stop this one. And let me do the checkout correctly. That is so slow, I'm ashamed of my computer. And that's what I told this morning already. On the good thing, I will ask for another more powerful computer. Perhaps it won't be a Mac this time. So that's the only difference. There is a slight difference here. So now you can see that we have migrated to reactive type. So I don't return a server response. I return a mono of server response. And this is what this thing does. And actually, instead of just calling value here, I must call body value, because now here I'm in the realm of reactive stuff, but this repository is still in the realm of blocking stuff. So I will return on like standard type, and I need to bridge between the reactive type system and this type system. So here I don't use just body, I use body value. We will see that the next step will fix that. Let's check that it works. And I hope that it will build a bit faster than before. Yes, no, yes. So let's try it. Now probably it has not started yet. So it will tell me it cannot connect. Yes, I'm too stressed again. Please start. And now, of course, when I check, it has started. And it still works. And with the same stuff, first time it misses, it puts it, second time we find it, and it hits the cache. And we are at a point that I described earlier, where actually our web layer is reactive, but our data access layer is not reactive. So we have a chain where half the stuff is reactive, half is not reactive. So we are still blocking. What we did is just not very useful. So we need to access our database in the reactive way, and that is much more involved. Because that means that we need to replace JPA. JPA is a spec that is actually blocking. So we need to replace JPA by something called R2DBC. And just as a driver, before was the H2 driver, now we need to access it with the R2DBC H2 driver. And well, we keep hassle cost, but we got caching because we used Hibernate's second level cache, which was abstracted away by JPA, and we remove JPA, we remove Hibernate, so we just keep hassle cost, but we don't cache. We will try to put back the cache afterwards, but right now we just want it to work. And it changes in several ways. The first thing is that now my person repository needs to be of type reactive sorting repository. So it's not that huge a problem, especially if you were not using anything that was JPA specific. And we can finally call body, because now our repository methods, they return reactive types. They return flux and they return mono. And now this body expects a publisher. So basically we need to tell it, hey, I will need to use this flux of person and say, hey, it's a person class because, yeah, type erasure and stuff, no generics at runtime, and it's done. So now let's check that everything still works. And it should work. I hope so. I mean, if my Git repo didn't change. But I just want you to see that it still works, and also that we lost the cache. So it takes a bit of time to compile. bit of time to start. At this time, I don't need Hazelcast. I could have removed the hazelcast.xml file. But still, I still have hope that it will be useful afterwards. So yes, it loads it from the database, and of course, no cache. No cache. And here you can see that, yeah, net is started. I'm very happy about that, but I lost my cache. That's a bit sad, honestly. But normally here at this point, everything in my call chain is reactive. So I don't have blocking calls. But you can trust me, or you can question yourself, how can you really, really be sure that nothing is blocking? Well, there is something there is a library actually called blockcount that checks for that. So I will add this additional dependency, and then I call blockcount.install. So this blockcount will actually install a Java agent at the beginning of the application. That's probably not something you want to do in production. So you can probably have dedicated profile or configuration files that will check that, hey, I'm running in production, I will not install blockcount, or I'm just running on my computer, I will install blockcount. And then this agent will check that, hey, you are doing a blocking call and it's on a thread where you shouldn't do blocking call. And then I will throw an exception and you will know about it during development. Well, hopefully during development. And so let's check that here we have nothing blocking. We are in development. So if I told you the truth, then nothing should happen. We can still continue doing it. But I will show you afterwards that at some point I will introduce a blocking call and it doesn't work that well. So here, still working, great, perfect. Now what I want to do is to introduce you to one of the simplest API, and I want to do that by adding a new feature. And this feature is, now if I request an entity that is not present in the database, I want to throw a 404. So how can we do that? So normally you would just say, hey, if my repository.get1 is null, then I return a 404. But here we cannot do that because we are using reactive. So we should try to avoid if else. What we need to do is to use the reactive API to do that. So this is how it reads. Here we say repository find by ID. So this returns a mono of person. And this mono, as I mentioned before, can wrap one value or nothing. And so if you check inside, you will be blocking. So remember, everything is subscription upon subscription. So we will just to subscribe to something else. And this is done with switch if empty. So that means that if this mono doesn't contain anything, we will switch to another mono, which is actually a mono error. And it contains a lambda that is actually a supplier of a 404. Whether it's a good idea to return a 404 if an entity is not present in the database, I leave it up to the expert of the REST API. But for me, that's good enough for this demo. So just let's check that it behaves as I told you. So if the entity exists, nothing changes. If the entity doesn't exist, I will have this 404 exception. Just check that it still works normally. Yes, and now I have an entity that doesn't exist, and I have the 404. So that's the real, in my opinion, the hardest part in the reactive world is to know what kind of API is available. Next step, I want my cache back. Give me back my cache. And it's a Spring application, and it's not a real Spring application unless I have a service layer. So I will introduce the cache in the service layer. And let me switch to this step. So now I introduce the service between the repository and the routes. And what it does is the following. I will just get in the cache to check if there is a person. with this ID. If it's null, then I will get it from the database. And if it works, I will put it in the cache. And of course, if it's not null, it's in the cache, I just wrap it under the mono. That seems to be pretty solid. So I will just start it. And we will have a nice surprise. Well, I hope we will have a nice surprise. And please continue starting. I don't know what happens at this point. Yes, it's just super slow. So if you want to send me money to buy a new computer, that would be very, very appreciated. I'm just ashamed now. So next week, I have an on-site talk. I hope it will be better. Otherwise, I mean, here I can like blame the fact that it's like using a lot of resources, but on-site, I will have no excuse. Oh, I have a 500 error. That's not what I wanted. What happens? Well, here it tells me, hey, probably you did something wrong. And you can see that block count I configure correctly. So I told you block count will tell you if something bad happens, if you are blocking on a supposedly not blocking thread. And that's exactly what I did. I have a blocking call. Ooh, I'm a bad person. And you can see the stack trace, and we can isolate the cause. And the cause is here. Here we are doing cache.get, and this is perfectly blocking. I'm asking Hazelcast, hey, can you get me back this entity? And this is in cluster. So until I get the entity, I will be blocking. That's not what you want. You don't want to do that. So we just fix it. Just don't use this kind of stuff. Just use the real API. And the real API is a bit more involved, of course. And the real API looks like this. So we will be doing async stuff. So the first is we have a supplier. And this return a completion stage. So this is an old abstraction from the GDK. I think it's from GDK 9. Now we have better abstractions, but that's what I think it's from GDK 8, sorry, because Hazelcast is compatible with Java 8. So here we can wrap this completion stage, or let's say not wrap, but bridge between completion stage and mono with this mono from completion stage. And this is how it reads. Here I will be calling do on next if actually there is a value in the mono. So if there is a value in the mono, I will just log that, hey, something has been found in the cache. If there is no value, remember, I will switch to this empty stuff. And then I will do my repository find by ID. And again, this returns a mono. So if there is at this point something, I will put it in the cache asynchronously, and I will log again. And here you can see the same. So without the logging, when I do the find all, I do the same. I put the stuff asynchronously into the cache. And normally at this point, it should work. I should have my cache back. The only difference is that I didn't just tell Hibernate, hey, configure it, and I don't want to care about it. Now I have to do everything explicitly with potential bugs, but with block count, they should be caught. So if you're lazy like me, that's not so great, but you can have both reactive and caching side by side, provided you do that yourself. So let's ask for person 2. Yes, I have person 2. Let's check. So my cache was called. I have nothing. It tells me, hey, person with ID2 set in cache. You can see it's not on the met thread, so that's great. And now I can ask for it again, and it's found in the cache. Now, as I told you, I can ask, just like before, just like with Hibernate, I can ask to query all the entities, and all of them will be put in the cache. And if I ask for entity, I don't know, 4 is a good number, then it will tell me, hey, it's found in the cache, because now my cache is fully hot. And that looks like the end of the demo.
we wait there. So because I think that we have a few questions, and actually one is from Simone, so that has joined us in the stream. So I will let Simone also to comment on his question if he wants.
Blockhound tells you that logging is blocking. Actually, I don't know, but I can show you the codes. And I'm using the loggers from the project Reactor themselves, which are supposed to be non-blocking. So I knew about it before, so I used the loggers that are non-blocking. I didn't check if you were using blocking loggers. Blockhound would tell it. To be honest, I'm a bit afraid because today my computer is bad. I already had bad experience today. So far for this talk, it's not that bad. So I would keep it that way. But you will have the repo and you can check by yourself. But yeah, always use these loggers.getLogger, which is an abstraction over your regular logging framework, and which is supposed to be non-blocking. I mean, that's the contract. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Other questions or comments?
Yes, actually, I think it was about, I can translate that for you. So I think at a certain point, you have worked with the routing to basically have the parsing, which is no longer an annotation, but to be done programmatically with a Fluent API, I remember. I don't remember the exact name. And basically, Francesco is asking you, okay, how does that handle in the case that you have a parsing exception in the case that instead of the ID being a number, it's going to be passed in as a string?
That depends on my programming skills, and my programming skills, as you remember, I mean, are pretty bad right now. So here I'm doing that like I would say a pig. I mean, it translates in French as a pig. So I don't care. I just get the post variable and say value of a string. So probably it won't work that well right now. But actually, you should wrap it and say, hey, that's not what you want to do. You should probably wrap it into an error.
Yeah, or maybe I think that what you could do is that you get the path variable ID as a string,
yes,
and then
correct.
Still working with the mappers. There should be like a map function somewhere in the reactive library that you can say, oh, I will put it as another mono of number in the case that you can transform it into a number, or otherwise you will get the empty mono, and therefore you can even reply, I guess, with the empty mono. And then I guess that what you need is a way to define that an empty mono will be mapped to a 4-4. So I think that there are several ways that you can approach this problem, even combining reactive programming, I assume.
The thing is, it will be, I mean, again, I'm not a guru, so I won't come up with a solution right now. The thing is, here, it won't be possible to pass a mono directly because you have find by ID and it accepts a long. So as you mentioned, you probably will first wrap it into a mono, then try to map it to a long, then try to map it to a find by ID, then. The good fun of reactive programming.
Yeah. And one last question that actually is more for me, and actually this can be is a bit on the side, but it gives me an opportunity as well. I think now it's a good time to remind people, and sorry if I get so I need to share it. Where do I need to share it? I'm about to send in the lateral chat, because the comment that I have, it will be about the ID, but it's a positive comment, because as people know that follow us, JetBrains give us a raffle to extract for one of their products, so you can do for IntelliJ IDEA if so you choose. But so people you are free to put your email in the form that you will find right now in the live chat. And please don't forget to subscribe to both the JUG Milano and JUG Torino channel to participate in the raffle by putting also as well the email there below. Here is the thing that I noticed, and I noticed only today because actually I don't program in a later JDK. But this is a good opportunity. So I very much liked how you used the var there. The only thing that I'm a little bit surprised is where the IDE shows to you the inference of the type that is made. Because now, instead of, I mean, all the point about var was, oh, we want to have the line shorter on the left. And now, because this kind of like hint, which is like the gray color, mono person and flux person is shown on the right, actually you have the effect that all your code is pushed even further on the right. So I'm wondering, aren't people complaining that this inference of the type should be on the left of the var keyword? And sorry for the small rant, but I think that what we have on the screen is a perfect opportunity.
The question is not to me.
Yeah, the question is also to you, is like if you ever sort of like had, or is like now become so much accustomed that you prefer it this way?
I mean, the thing is now I'm used to this. Actually, it makes the code itself cleaner in the Git repo, and I still have my hints when I need it. So, I mean, it started with Kotlin. You know, Kotlin has var and val. And it has type inference since a long time, so I got used to that. So I cannot be super objective saying, hey, but you should. I mean, I'm getting used to that.
Or we can start a big flame about the fact that var is actually useful.
I will just finish my talk, and then you can all have a big flame, because tomorrow I take my flight, so I need to prepare my bag.
No, I didn't want to start a flame. It was that I envy IntelliJ because of these type hints that it gives to you. Because I like it, because for instance, I use Eclipse and I don't have it. At least I use still an old version. But I'm only surprised that in this case here, it seems to be playing on a disadvantage more than an advantage. So that was only my comment. But yeah, so it was also an opportunity for people to remind that they can subscribe to the YouTube channel, and by putting the email in the form that I linked in the live chat, they can win one coupon raffled later. Okay, so sorry for this little digression.
No, that's fine. Really, interactions are always nice. And again, I'm nearly finished. So yeah, I've showed you the demo. Now I just want to have some sum up. If you want to migrate from imperative to reactive, and you are using Spring, I would really advise to migrate to functional APIs first, just to remind you, hey, this is not what I'm used to. If you keep annotation, it will work on the surface. It will still compile the same way, but at runtime, it will be very, very different. And you actually want something to remind you that it's not. Everything in the call chain needs to be reactive as soon as you've got one blocking call. Well, you're not reactive anymore. So it might improve the situation a bit, but not completely. So just use block count just to be sure. And since I don't remember, but an attendee mentioned RX Java, block count is actually as bindings for RX Java. So you can put block count on the class path in your RX Java application, and we will know like this is a thread where no blocking code should happen, and it will throw an exception. So whatever things you are using, well, not whatever, but RX Java and Project Reactor, you can use block count. It will be more work. I mean, let's face it, it's quite different from what we are used to as like an old timer, but it's possible. If it's up to you to decide whether it's really, really worth it. The point about coroutines is for the Kotlin flavor. You can find the Kotlin flavor in the same Git repository under the Kotlin branch, so I won't talk about it more. But please Just like everything you do, don't use reactive because others do. Don't use reactive to put that on your resume. Don't use reactive because it's cool, because it's hype, because someone told you to use it. Use reactive because it makes sense in your case. Like, hey, the pros overweight the cons. So it's an engineering decision, and it should be based on facts, not on trends. Just like microservice and stuff. Wait, let's not start another flame war. You can read my blog. You can follow me on Twitter. This is the repo to the GitHub repository. So I really encourage you to have a look, to check, to play by yourself. And if I got you interested in Hazelcast, we have Slack if you have questions, and you can get some free trainings. So now I'm done. My watch is ended, and I can answer more questions if you want to, or just like starts the flame war about anything, because I have opinions on a lot of things like you.
I have a question, if I may. I came late to the party, but if you haven't spoken about this, do you have any comments on RSocket, the protocol, and whether it applies to reactive?
No, I have, as I mentioned, first, I'm not a reactive guru. I never touch RSocket. It's on my radar, but a lot of things are, and so far I didn't get any incentive to get into it. So I cannot comment on that at all. Okay.
And as a question that is on the side, it is that maybe is more on your side. It is the protocol, the protocol that Hazelcast uses to communicate. Is that a blocking protocol, meaning that when you do the put async or the get async, it's not really a properly asynchronous call, because you just take a normal blocking call, put it on a different thread, and then do the blocking call, or it is actually a proper asynchronous protocol that Hazelcast uses?
Let's see. That's a good question. So we are just using future.
You have a serialization service, get a sync internal key. Okay, so that's a wrapper for the completable future, but what does the other call does?
Which one? I mean,
can you go back one step?
That's something I need to understand in IntelliJ, is how can you go back to the previous?
Oh man, you have a Mac. I would tell you, but yeah. Can you go inside get async internal at the end of the line?
Yeah, it's generally at this point where I call my colleague and ask him, hey, can you just like sum it up for me? Because I mean, yeah.
You're so right. Yeah. I mean, at this point, we're just going too deep into the rabbit hole. It's very difficult to say. But
the thing is, because Hazelcast is distributed, you need to call the partition, and then you need to aggregate the result, and you need to join. So it's really black magic for me, honestly. I don't go that deep in general.
Okay.
But the code is available. It's open source. It's the magic of open source. So if you are really interested in that, well, you can do the sequence diagram and check by yourself.
Oh, look at that, Matteo. We have a question.
Yeah, I was about to say, Dim Cook is asking, when Project Loom is completed and we get threads for free, do you think reactive programming will still have some value?
I will give you what I thought and what I now think, and it's as good as what you value my words. Just don't take it for the truth. I'm always very bad at forecasts. I believe that the current trend on reactive programming, all those like APIs, they are hard to master. Again, I don't know many methods, so when I do need, I ask my next reactive guru. Not great. On the opposite side, I'm much more convinced by coroutines. Sorry, I'm a Kotlin fanboy. I was a Spring fanboy. I'm not in the right place. I know, but still. The thing is, the coroutines, they add an abstraction layer so that you can write code that appears sequential, but that will be run in parallel. It's an abstraction layer. So your mind is made, I don't know, at least my mind, I will not generalize, my mind is made to read stuff sequentially. And so I want to write the same and say, oh, I want that to like work in parallel. It's not magic, but I mean, again, the mental model is much easier for me to understand. So I believe when we get those threads for free, I think there will be, of course, there will be some like change. And one of the change will be that the hardest part, which is basically knowing the API, will just have no value anymore. And then we will get back to something which is easier. Because let's face it, I mean, I'm not a rockstar developer. I'm just like spending a lot of time to understand a lot of stuff. And most people, they don't spend as much time as me. And so the problem is we work mainly with like normal people. I am normal people. After I'm done coding, I want to run, I want to hike, I want to do stuff. So we cannot expect everybody to know like 100% all the APIs in the world. What we want them to know is to know a few concepts that can be easily applicable so they can write maintainable codes. In my opinion, again, it's worth what it's worth. The reactive programming model is not focused on that. It's focused on a very small portion of developers, and the promise is, hey, the monthly bill will be lower. Yeah, but you will increase the price of your developers because you will need to actually pay them more because they are much more skilled than the average developers. Before I went to developer advocacy, I was a consultant. I worked in many different companies. And they were not Red Hats, they were like real companies. And the average level of a developer is not what we see at conferences. It's regular people who just happen to be coding for their living. And I believe we are tempted. I try not to be tempted, especially because of this experience, but we are tempted that we somehow believe that everybody is a rockstar programmer and everybody can just like learn an API in 1 hour and it's just easy. That's, I believe, not the case. So Project Loom will change stuff, and I believe that Project Reactor, Eric's Java, they will keep their core people who know the stuff, but it will be very hard for them to get new users. Whereas coroutines will probably get more and more users, provided you use Kotlin. So it's another constraint. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, but also I think that that there is also one very good point that I especially liked about what you said earlier, is that while we cannot expect to set the bar at Rockstar for everyone, there is still truth, I think, for everybody that has a minimum of passion for this job, that is like you can always learn the concept and then apply it, and once you learn the concept, then they stay with you. So basically it's not something that, because I take my example, I've learned about the streams, basically Java streams, actually on Clojure first, and then just for fun, now we can just to play with something different, because Clojure, it was at the time where I was, what is this language? It's so crazy. And then, then Java streams came out of almost for free, simply because, okay, I got my head around this concept and then I could apply. So I think that as well, this is the good things that we can keep. And regardless of what will come new, this kind of concept, because they are so foundational, you will find a good value moving forward, regardless on whatever's come next or whatever libraries you are actually using to implement this concept. So I think this is a very good.
But if you want to have fun, you can check the many different ways that were introduced in the many different Java version of doing asynchronous stuff. It's crazy. Huh? It's really interesting. I think that at some point I will write a blog post, short blog posts, like a summary of, hey, like in Java 1.0, you did this like that, then this like this, then future, then like completable future, and I mean, it never stops. So, I mean, this is interesting. It means that whatever was introduced was never enough. It was not good enough. I believe, again, I'm not doing real world projects anymore. I believe the coroutine abstractions, for what it's worth, it's the easiest one to get with. Of course, you will still get bitten because it's an abstraction, so at the lower levels, there is something that you didn't expect. But still, I believe that it's the correct answer right now.
Unless the other moderators have other questions, that I have one more. Okay, so I really appreciate your demo. In addition to the talk, because especially in your demo, you've shown really a migration path. So I have my simple application that everybody does with Spring Boot or whatever framework they choose, and then on how to migrate on a path that I think it's very sensible, and I could follow even myself. I don't use Spring Boot for several reasons, but I think that what I was thinking is that yes, so people can find your demo on the GitHub, so they can follow the different commit history to replicate. I was wondering if you had an idea, because all this concept of the reactive, as you also presented, are really joining on back pressure also concept sometimes. So I was wondering if if anybody wanted to play a bit further with your demo, if you had some little use case in mind that you would like to suggest in your experience. Normally, when I start to grasp on this concept for use case, I tend to believe about IoTs more than the Twitter streams. So I wonder if you had any, or maybe you want to suggest to the audience another talk where you push this concept even further to show the good benefit of reactive on an additional level.
On the use case level, I cannot provide anything regarding reactive. On the, hey, you want to see the difference, what you can do is you can put the base application and you can put the reactive application, and then you hammer them like crazy for performance testing. And then you will see that at some point, but you must really go multiple thousands of concurrent requests per second. You will see that on the blocking side, you will plateau at some point, and then it will just crumble. Whereas on the reactive side, if you configure correctly, which I'm not sure I did, but I might seem like this, it will scale and it will scale more or less, I wouldn't say linearly, but probably not so badly. So that's what if you want to really check the benefits, that's what you will see. You will also, by doing so, you will also understand how many concurrent requests you need for it to be really, really interesting, where you will see some return over investment. Before that point, you're just playing, yeah? You're just buying a Porsche or a Ferrari and while driving in France on the highway. You can do that with my car, which is a Kia. That's the same. Okay, you're nice. Hey, I'm showing off, but it doesn't bring you anything.
No, makes sense. Makes sense, especially when also you mentioned is that is really where also indeed maybe starting to get on this concept and playing it with even with a limited demo, but that really show the benefit, then basically you can bring this concept. And one of the key point that you mentioned, like about cloud native deployment, is really key to that. Okay, so unless Simone or Mario have any other comments, this will be a good time.
No, well, I have a comment on what Nicolas said about the scalability, and we have actually measured this, and it is amazing. It's until you actually measure this, you have no idea of how much difference this makes, and especially if you have like deployments that are now bound to the cloud, and you want to scale to something that is beyond a hello world, so let's say 1,000+ requests per second. With blocking, you need multiple machines with asynchronous, whatever kind of asynchronous, could be plain asynchronous or reactive asynchronous. You just need one machine, and it's probably just sleeping most of the times. And we actually have a customer that it is able to it had a massive amount in traffic during the COVID pandemic, and then another massive amount of traffic when the Netflix series The Queen Gambit came out. And so this client of ours is a chess online game website, and they stayed on the same server for both surges, and they just noticed it barely that there was like, I think they went like 4 times the traffic that I had before, and they just barely noticed on a single server. So it actually makes like a big difference. Even if you're just interested in the business and not in the technical side of things, you save money just because you use less hardware and less resources on the cloud.
That's where I want to, like, I wouldn't say push back, but just like make it more related. You save money on hardware and monthly bill, but then you consume more in developer, like, yes, I would say salaries and maintenance and whatever. So
correct. No, it's a very good point, Nicolas.
It should be evaluated. Again, don't do this because others do it. Like, measure. We are engineers. We should base on our decisions based on facts. So be pragmatic, please. Please, yes. Be pragmatic. Don't do microservices. Sorry.
It's not that easy to measure how much more are you paying in terms of development cost when migrating to Reactive, for instance. So yeah, it's not a trivial count, but
that's a correct. That's a good comment. But then there is another comment that in most cases we measure what is easy to measure and base our decisions on that, and what is hard to measure we just ignore. And though it still exists, like I always tell people, hey, you've got this like super nice report with like 10 pages, and at the end, at the top of your hierarchy, it fits into a single Excel cell, and it has lost all the dimensions. And so this metric is completely useless. So I wouldn't say I'm afraid, but I'm like disappointed in how companies are run in general, because it's all about metrics. And yeah, we know we take decisions based on rationality. Most of the case is just bull crap. It's just, hey, don't worry, everything is taken care of. We know what we are doing. We have the fight. Well, you just lost all nuances of the truth. You just are like focused on the stuff that you can easily measure. Hey, lines of code. Let's measure the lines of code. That's an easy metric. The code quality, it's much harder.
Well, I kind of agree with you. You have to kind of have the big picture. It is true. However, there's like you said, there are things that are easy to measure and easy to quantify that have a direct link to costs. Some of them are much more difficult to measure, but it's also true that, you know, because of that, is not that you ignore them, but it's, if they are, let's say, impossible to measure, well then, you know, it's like, okay, yeah, we have to save. I mean, if we do this, we save some money on that thing. Then maybe yes, we spend something more on the other thing, but if you cannot measure it, it's very difficult.
Exist. Exactly. If you cannot measure it, it doesn't exist, which is completely wrong. It exists. It's just that you cannot, or don't want to, or don't want to put the effort into measuring it. I mean, I always remember I was working for a big company, and we were doing some estimates before projects. And of course, you know how estimates are. Sometimes you are given like 6 lines, a paragraph, and hey, like how long should it take? And it's a whole project of several years. So somebody came with the idea, hey, you know what? Let's put like a trust score next to that. And of course, I have no proof, but I'm pretty sure that with the aggregation of the Excel files at the top, the trust score was just not there anymore. And the trust score is the most important stuff in your estimation, especially if it's a big estimation. So I think like not our industry, I mean, the managers, whatever, they think, we all think we are like taking rational decisions based on facts. It's just that, no, where any idiot can take decisions based on an Excel file. You don't need to have a 6-figure salary. Any idiot can do that. But the smart people, the skilled people, the people with experience, they are able to like see the big picture and not just base their decision on this Excel file, but of stuff that is much harder. I mean, it's guesstimate. I mean, we are doing that all the time as engineers. Especially when it comes to Microsoft. No, I don't know Microsoft stuff. But we are used to that. And then, of course, we fail. We don't pretend we are right. Like code coverage. Oh, that's the worst thing ever. Like, let's do some code coverage to see our code quality. And guess what? Whatever happens, oh, we've lot more tests now. Now we can test all our getters and setters. Oh, it's much better. And now we have a single cell to say, we have 80% code coverage. We are the king of the world. And some people will say, no, it's 100%. You should aim for 100%. And there are people saying, okay, let's do 100%. And in one of my demo, I show you that 100% is not enough in some cases. So this is just crap. But we are engineers, so we believe in metrics because like this is how we improve. We measure and we improve, and it's a Deming cycle. This is crap, folks. We should have a holistic view of the stuff, and some stuff that is hard to measure, but as an impact, you should start to measure it anyway. And if you cannot measure it, then you cannot just base your decision only on the stuff that you can measure. Otherwise, you will take a lot of wrong decisions.
Yeah. Okay. Totally agree. Let me just
do. I can talk for hours.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So let me do this then. If I save this much money on the hardware because because the plan is I can go reactive. Okay. Well, then I can use that figure to say, okay, so with this figure that now is saved on this side of things, where can I apply it elsewhere, right? So let's say, for example, let's just make a few examples. I'm going to save, let's say, $5,000 a year if I go reactive, right? Well, then obviously $5,000 doesn't pay the salary for a year of an engineer, of an additional engineer, right? And therefore, you know, is it worth? I mean, if I need to hire another engineer to go reactive, then it's not worth it. On the other hand, if I save $1 million, well, then, you know, I have some more room to spend $1 million. So
yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So but I totally agree with you that it's very common to ignore completely the stuff that you cannot measure and put that out of the picture, and then get you know, take very wrong decision because just you ignored what's the big picture. So totally with you on that.
But it's very widespread, and again,
indeed,
it's not engineers. All the managers that I've met, nearly all of them, only one of them told me, I prefer to go with my guts because I have no clue. Like, for example, something that like impacts me directly is now we are doing talks online as developer advocates. So a lot of people are saying, hey, now it was very hard to measure your impact before, but now we can check how many people were behind their screens. Yeah, it was some shit as the lines of code. It tells you absolutely nothing, because I'm pretty sure that half the people that are like registered, that are behind their screen right now, they are like disturbed by their children. They are hungry. Perhaps their phone is ringing. I mean, if I was not talking to you, I would probably have taken the call because it's a friend, and so on and so forth. This is just like illusions. We are pretty sure of the numbers. Even in the numbers, they don't mean anything. And
I'm pretty sure in this talk you have impacted a couple of millions people.
Oh yeah, me too.
Well, at least three have also written, and you know the funnel of the thing that they say that for every one that writes a comment of thanks, there is at least 10 people that have thought the same, but simply they are too shy or too difficult to write it on the mobile sometimes.
And we are going to make a lot of money with the ads that we are going to put on our on this video as well, because with 2 million people.
No, sorry, Frank, I have to correct you because we are still not 1,000 subscribers. So YouTube says
I know.
So this is a good reason to
subscribe to the channel, guys.
Subscribe. And also, as you know, if ever we will receive any money, which anyway I doubt it because it's more for the passion, they will be well spent for good purposes. Yes.
Inviting speakers, definitely so.
Yes, absolutely.
If you are interested on a very focused talk, which touches the subject of code coverage and mutation coverage, I have a talk about it. And you can actually like expand it to any kind of metric. You know this quote that when you start using a metric to reach a goal, now that metric is now useless because people are trying to reach the metric and forget about the goal. I mean, if you have a metric to check the reach of a goal, you should never tell it. Never. Otherwise, people, whether willingly or unwillingly, they will game it. I mean, especially if they have incentive, if you give them money, that's really hard. So
just to be clear, is like the goal is the code quality, but then if you use as a metric the coverage percentage, then you try to game the coverage percentage, but you don't really go.
Yes, people will start to test unit test, also get trendsetter just to increase the coverage.
Yeah,
I saw that.
I was in a position once where I was the architect of an application that was outsourced. So basically, I had all the problems and I had no leverage. And so I wanted to ensure that when we got the project, when we got the application, we got like a good enough quality. So I knew that if I asked for a too high quality, then it would be useless because people would game the stuff. So I asked for 60% cut coverage, not too much. And I asked, hey, and without the getters and the filters, please. And afterwards, I discovered how I could like find the real coverage. And actually it's called mutation testing. And the idea is that mutation testing is, you can also game it, but it's so much harder to game the mutation testing coverage than to do the real job. Then you probably would prefer to do the real job. Whereas gaming code coverage, I can do that in any language. I would just create a generator that creates unit tests around everything and with no assert. And I will have 100% code coverage, like very easy. And even if I don't know the language. And so that's useless. And then there are still people that are managing their project. In this talk, I tell, hey, are there any managers in the room? Folks, the only benefit of code coverage is that any manager can understand it because it's super easy. The number of lines of code tested divided by the number of lines of code total. Any manager can understand that. You don't need to be a software engineer. And so that's the reason why it's very popular.
Yeah, but I've seen, sorry, on this one, I want to contribute one piece of information more. So I was personally at a certain point facing exactly that kind of like problem, simply because for a project that are different modules, I needed to try to bump the code coverage. And one modules inside of this multi-module project is exactly what you said, simply interfaces and POJOs. But really POJOs, because they are basically generated out of JUGs, but which does only the setter and the getter. So fortunately, there is an old saying, cum grano salis. So every tool, you should use it with the right of mind. We try to apply your brain, and not just because engineer only. Every human should do that. And so basically, instead of doing the code coverage and sort of like, oh yeah, we generate a bunch of setter and getter which are totally useless and waste not only space on a hard drive but also computation cycles at every time, there the solution was simply to say, well, we're perfectly aware that this code is generated. We are also perfectly aware that it is well isolated. So this code is not part of the code coverage. So you act still on the metric and you simply say, okay, I exclude this one. Other projects that were simply used as part of the build, then we simply excluded that because we said, okay, this code is actually run, but not run by the user, it's run by ourselves. So if we're not able to successfully build, we will simply know because the code that makes the build itself will crash. So we don't need to coverage simply because it's part of our release cycle as well. So I think that I totally agree with you with and I see that because I remember that some people said, oh yeah, but this is like in other part of the project I've seen doing that testing and getting, and when I've asked why, because I cannot really realistically believe that somebody is willing to do that just to type on the keyboard. Then they told me, yeah, it's for code coverage. And I think it was a wrong decision to take that approach. So I think that engineers or not, if people are rational and they want to reason about the thing, then of course a good solution will be found, even if you are still aware of the metric and trying to reach the metrics. On the other hand, if people just want to act sloppy, they will act sloppy, no matter how intellectually honest you will try to be with the metrics. So that's my personal take on that one.
So moral of the story, surround yourself with good people and a good team. That's a good conclusion. And a good manager, very important.
Yes, 100% agree. I cannot agree more, especially on that. And even when you're doing the engineer role and the person is not necessarily a former engineer. But if you have at least before joining Red Hat, I had managers which were not necessarily software developers, but still because they were, using their brains, then we totally got along really super well and productively, especially productively and effectively. Yeah.
I don't have time tonight. I'm sorry. Force, you need to reinvite me. I will be very happy to do it for you.
For sure.
Me ranting even more. I will be very happy. Thanks a lot, Francesco.
Okay.
I think that we put down, and hopefully we will be in it's like we will have dealt with the human malware situation, and we will be able to invite you in person, and we will do the hybrid approach as usual, which JUG Milano as well as JUG Torino, I think we're doing even before the pandemic. So we're happy that we can continue this service, at least for the moment, in a sort of like degraded mode, and hopefully we will be spinning up real soon as well with both modalities as soon as possible. So unless there are any questions, I think we shall wrap up. Simone, Mario, just nod me. Frank, if you had any questions. So again, Nicolas, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really appreciated. Please don't forget, everyone who is listening, to check out the links that Nicolas have previously mentioned to you. Again, thank you for Azercast also as well for letting you be here today. And what more to say? So thanks again for everybody to join. Again, I know that I will sound like a YouTuber or a wannabe YouTuber, but don't forget to subscribe to the JUG Milano and JUG Torino YouTube channel. You have no idea how much subscribing helps little groups and user group like us. So please don't hesitate. Anyway, you won't receive a physical copy of an encyclopedia at home that you have to pay. It's like you can subscribe, and eventually in 1 year, if you don't like it anymore, you want to go
but
from...
if you don't subscribe, I can come to your home and convince you.
Yes, we will send you Frank that convince you that you must remain subscribed, and it's good to follow JUG Torino and JUG Milano. So absolutely.
Roberto was from Sicily.
No, I'm from Turin, but I'm quite big, so the people knows that.
It's quite convincing anyway. So, and okay, so that's all. So actually, that is the key point. So let's say currently, to be honest, with all of you listening, we haven't decided yet if we're going to have a talk during the summer or we will start again in September. So the right way to be informed about that is by clicking the subscribe button here on YouTube and then subscribe on the mailing list. So with that, I think that we are going to close the channel. Thank you again for listening, and take care, and speak to you soon. Thank you again, Nicolas.
Thank you.
Bye, Nicolas. See you next time.